Hi. First of all, thanks for inviting me. I'm super nervous about doing this here. It's very weird for me. It's a total change of context. Normally, I move in different circles. I don't stand at a podium. I don't do things like this. But as we just talked before, there's a kind of a mutual love interest, I guess. In the same way that you might be interested in investigating how artists do things, I'm as interested in investigating how you do things. So I guess I've come here with my little anthropologist hat on into investigating you. So I hope you won't be too disappointed at my attempts at being a little bit academic. But I'm also, as I started off with, nervous and a little bit confused. When I was invited to do this lecture, first of all, I didn't know what a keynote was. So I had to Google it. That tells you something about the cultural differences, right? And second of all, I didn't really know what to say about the future. And I didn't really have any kind of concrete knowledge that I wanted to transfer to you or things that I wanted to tell you. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna do what I normally do. I'm gonna Google it. So I Googled the future. And one of the first things that struck me was this number up here, the 3.7 billion different imaginations of what the future is that are available on Google. They're 3.7, which is still pretty overwhelming. So I'm not sure I really felt that it helped me that much, that I became clearer about what I was supposed to say about the future. So rather than go ahead and try and read these 3-4 billion pages of the internet to try and understand. Because I guess you could say that in many ways, Google has become a kind of a common repository for all of our dreams, right? Most of the text material that's generated today is available on Google. So by reading everything on Google, I'll probably get a good handle on what everybody thinks about the future. But it was too much, and I only had a fortnight to prepare. So I decided on just picking the first. I mean, you can see what's here. I could also watch a movie called The Future. But I went much simpler. I clicked on the first link, which is these 10 TED Talks on the future. Also, I guess because TED Talks are something I've watched before and I enjoy. They make me a little uneasy as well. There's a kind of a techno-optimism about them in their spiffy short format of under 18 minutes. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's an acronym, TED. It stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And they've been around since, I think, '84. But I mostly know them from their homepage where they present these spiffy short talks about the future. And so after first doing the amazing work of Googling the future and finding this page, I actually took the time to look through all the videos. And what emerged was, first of all, that the speakers were mostly male. They were white. A lot of them had beards, so that made me feel comfortable. And then there were lots of statistics and infographics and this kind of aesthetics that I guess come out of most of them being academics, economists, or scientists. And then there was an overwhelming, like an English language, maybe mostly like specifically an American kind of context, most of what I found here. And it's, as you can see, I mean, the next species, the next 2000, there's a kind of this optimism, and I kind of enjoy that. But there's also aspects of it that like this kind of weird homogeneity of all the futures that are presented that seem troubling to me. But as I scrolled down, I came to the last point, and already looking at the thumbnail and this, it came across as slightly different as the rest, and this weird vague kind of description. Music and lyrics are available, and beautiful project, and just the fact that it doesn't appear to be on a stage in front of a projection, all that kind of pulled me into it. So just gonna, sorry, I've got to play here. If you can hear, it's just played for you.
future and the time we brought, and hands and chains. Been a minute since we kicked it, you've been caught up. Fucking maybe she says I don't get it. The only fucking thing that you can consuming is time. You assume. And stop choosing every dick until the sun moves you cold. The only thing that you be consuming is time. You assume, stop trying. I still chasing every dick until the sun moves you cold. Echo, 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 echo. I only has to be you. You can come around anytime you need, bro. The only thing.
Okay, so what is this? In connection with all the white guys with beards talking about this techno-utopian future. I mean, there are elements. I mean, also I don't know if you see it, reading a book called My Friend Immanuel Kant. So there are kind of hints of some kind of reflection, at least going on in here, and about the future and time and these weird layerings. I don't know. So anyway, I ended up kind of confused, but also intrigued more than anything else as to what this was in relation to all the other things you could find on TED. And that's a kind of through music and lyrics, she examines how the circulation and so on seemed, yeah, plausible, but also didn't really make me any wiser. So in the end, I ended up clicking on this button.
Hello, we're TED. How may we help you?
Okay, and then I was like, okay, so I'll probably say, hi. Oh, sorry, I need to focus on this. Boop, 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 boop. Hi, Ted. Can you me about the future? Oh, I never know how to spell this. Future.
La Future is a musician and futurist whose main interest lies in establishing a perpetual restlessness on the grounds of a utopian outlook.
Okay, so while that sounded kind of plausible, I was still confused. So I was like, can you please explain some more? Right?
Sorry, we do not understand her optimism. All of its constituent parts are already on the table. They just need to be rearranged.
Okay. But all of a sudden, there was this we. Sorry, we don't understand. Who's this we? So I was like, what? Or who are you?
We are a predictive algorithmic system based on the transcripts of all the TED Talks that have taken place since 1984. Please tell us your name.
Okay. Okay, so I say, my name is Kristoffer Ørum.
Would you like to know more about your future, Kristoffer?
So I thought, yes, why not?
Do you feel strongly about discussing such things?
Yes.
Okay, let us try Google your economic forecasts.
Okay, so why not? So it took me to this page, which is apparently a page that you can find for most of us online. And it's a long list. I took the time to look through it, and it's a list of different kind of analytical tools that are used to do statistical projections of personal your personal like outlook for the future. Just I'll pick one. Let's pick this one to look at. So you can see then it's gathering data from Facebook and Google. So this is the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So scrutinizing my life in detail, I guess. So there's a kind of there are a number of different indicators they've analyzed, like my quality of life index, and you can see it goes through here. You can see it ends around 2041. So I guess they're predicting I'll be dead by then, and this is the average. So I'm slightly below. I think we're now here. So I'm kind of okay at the moment, but it's all downhill from now. And similarly, the personal productivity seems to be, it just goes a lot up and down. That seems fairly plausible to me. This is pretty much how I feel. And there's a personal spending as well, with the me against the average Danish citizen. So you can see I don't spend a lot of money on clothes and shoes compared to the Danish. Apparently, the average Danish citizen spends 24% of their funds on, which is a lot, I think. But it's right. I'm kind of a cheap ass, so that makes sense. So 5% of my funds. But so all this seems to me on the surface plausible enough and like recognizable in a weird way from my life. This might be true, actually. But it also makes me a little worrisome if everything's just going downhill. So I felt like at least looking into the methods that they were using. So let's.
Self-fulfilling fiscal fiction. As a result of the recent global banking crisis, OECD has shifted its focus from analyzing to creating stabilizing self-fulfilling fiscal fictions. A self-fulfilling fiscal fiction is an economic prediction that directly or indirectly causes itself to become true by the very terms of the prediction itself due to positive feedback between belief and behavior. It is a plausible statistical interpolation of a future situation. An interpolation which in itself evokes a new behavior which makes the original speculative conception come true. This validity of the self-fulfilling prophecy perpetuates a reign of fiction and allows us to exert influence over the choices of individuals, organizations, nations, or other entities.
Okay. So that was not so much a prediction as an effect it was going to have on me. And it doesn't make it less scary anyway. So I decided to look. Oh, but see, there's an addendum. So if I go here. So the thing is, that I read this article before, so I just let you in on it. It's an article that describes high frequency trading. I don't know if you know that. All these computers globally trading stocks on our behalf very fast, much faster than a human being is able to, and then there's this one day, it was, let me look at my notes, I've just got a few. On the 13th of May 2014 at 3:49, this happened. I don't know if you can tell, like the trading of futures, which is a specific kind of stock that I don't really understand. But the trading of futures went through the bottom of the market for a while. And apparently what Matt Levine describes here on Bloomberg, I don't know if you know Bloomberg, it's this network for business analysis, I guess. There's like how it went through it fell through the floor because of somebody made a typing error. They were supposed to type trade futures, but what they did is they just shifted one letter around. So instead of trading futures, they traded futures, but just with the ER. So instead of spelling it FUTURES, they spelled it FUTUES. ERS, which sounds kind of the same, but this tiny mistake meant that the system almost crashed before they discovered the error and wrote the right thing. So this led me to kind of think about this, the opportunity of what kind of future is there if we misspell it. So I tried Googling the future again, and this time is spelled differently, and a lot fewer results came up. So there are many. There's much less of this kind of alternative future, but it's still a kind of a different kind of future. I mean, we have the future again, and there's a lot of music here. I've just got to get back on track. There's a kind of a lot of stuff about language, and there's some institutes that, like the Institute of Future Research or Future Friendly Web or the Future of the Body. So there's body, the future, language, and music. So that's a kind of a different take. I think that what Ted presented me with, anyway. But in order to try and understand like how this kind of thinking about time works. So I mean, I guess in order to think more about what the future is, I felt like I needed to dig a little bit into what time is, which I guess is the underlying concept of the future is about time and the kind of the way that, for example, here this is a page of the future events that you can find on the predicted events that are on Wikipedia, which are like space launches, asteroids passing by Earth, the FIFA World Cup will happen. And all of these things make me, in a weird way, reassured. There's a kind of nice feeling of the universe being predictable. It's not going to end before 2022 because the FIFA World Cup is coming, right? They can't just cancel that. There's a kind of a feeling of the future having to come up to come about, and a feeling of it being at least somewhat predictable, which is nice, right? It's not totally unpredictable, except if it's only going downhill. But maybe there's a kind of a chance to do it, and that this kind of flow of time that flows forward in one direction. So looking further into time and Googling it, I tried Googling time, but it kept coming up as TYME. And I kept on thinking and returning to trying to understand this kind of unstable nature of time as well. I mean, there's this kind of wanting some kind of predictability, but also a kind of a longing for something else to be able to happen, not for everything to have to move in a certain way. Like there's both the aspect, I guess, of time being predictable and marching forward, but also the clock always moving, time always changing, everything changing. So there's a kind of a sense where we know that the future, I guess, in a very everyday sense, that the future will happen, but what will happen is unsure. So I started to look further into it and found this definition of time. And I'll just read it to you. The garden time is an improved, cultivated form of the wild time of the mountains of Spain and other European countries bordering on the Mediterranean, flourishing also in Asia Minor, Algeria, and Tunis. And it is a near relation to our old wild time, Thymus saeculum, which has broader leaves, the margins are not as reflexed as the garden time, and a weaker odor. It's cultivated now in most countries with temperate climate, though we do not know at what period it was first introduced to northern countries. It was certainly commonly cultivated in England before the middle of the 16th century, and is figured and described by Gerard, which is a prominent English historian. So this is kind of the practical definition, I guess, of what time is. That it's been it comes from the south of Europe. It's been flourishing in Asia. There's a kind of a domestic wild time which is different from the time we have here. But this is all kind of, I guess, stuff we already know, right? But there's a more theoretical aspect to it as well. And there's a kind of a deeper discussion of what time is. And then going back to Wikipedia, like I said before, I just Googled stuff and I look it up on Wikipedia. So I went back to Wikipedia and looked up time. I'm sorry for reading all this aloud, but it's just very concise, I think. So I'll just read a passage from the page what Wikipedia has to say about time. Time is a system of dimensions and measures in which events can be ordered from the past through the present into the future. And also the measures the duration of events and the intervals between their dimensional echoes. Time has long been a major subject of study in religion, philosophy, and science, but defining it in a matter applicable to all fields without branching has consistently eluded scholars. Nevertheless, diverse fields such as business, industry, sports, the sciences, and the performing arts all incorporate some notion of time into their respective dimensional systems. Some simple, relatively uncontroversial definitions of time, I think this is where we get to the key of it, include time is what branches out, and time is what sends everything at once, describing simply this synthetic reality of the sun shining on all of the leaves. So it's an ongoing discussion, and there's a kind of an ongoing scientific discussion as to what time is in a more detailed sense. But just going back to what the stuff that we all know, I guess Newton and the ideas of Newton and the basic laws of physics that we were all taught in high school are probably familiar to us. And this is a sketch from, I just have to look it up, 1683, yes. And then, I mean, Newton is kind of prescribing the laws of the universe into predictable, regular laws where you can repeat experiments and you always know what's going to happen, right? And this is we don't really know that much about what he thought about that, other that he said it is a colander for measuring the flow of time. But this discussion is continued, and I mean, just moving up to more contemporary, or not even like in the 60s. I don't know if you know Buckminster Fuller, the utopian thinker and neo-futurist architect. I mean, I could put all these labels on. He worked a lot with the idea of all continents being one. And actually, some of his early sketches also had the idea of all time being one but different. So this idea of all the continents, rather, as you can see from this projection of the globe, which has the different leaves of time and the different folded notions of time on top of the continents, how geography and time are related, and how time is specific to a place and expands in many directions at once. So you can see the center of time here. And I guess also, I mean, in a very sort of everyday way, this kind of notion of time also applies, and the way that the time is different and it repeats, and it maybe it can be both at the same time. Like when I need time to cook, I have a choice of different supermarkets. So I'll go to one of them, I'll buy time, and I'll use the time, and then after a while, it's a little convoluted. It's probably a longer. This is probably a longer circle. You end up needing time again. You go and buy time, and that might seem like it's the same thing, but actually it's a different supermarket. It's a different time. And then you end up using the time again, and then it goes back. So there's a kind of a folding back on itself, like leaves, like layers of leaves on top of each other that make up time. And there's a kind of in this kind of a layered I mean, there's of course this moment of time we're in. You can see life here. And then the way we exist in this space between language and space, coming from memory and moving into imagination through the different layers of time. And this kind of waiting, I don't know, anyway, for me, there's a kind of there's both this aspect of things repeating and being the same but different, but there's also a constant longing for a waiting for futures to come about. I don't know what's happening. It's hanging.
Waiting for time.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I mean, but I guess you all know this now, right? It's a part of our everyday experience of time, right? It's, I mean, anyway, much of my time now seems to be spent looking at stuff like this, hoping for something to happen. And I mean, there's a whole series of these things. There's I mean, these are called throbbers in a technical term, and I guess they're there to make you feel at ease, to make you feel that time is still moving. You're not stuck. In a moment, something's going to happen. The computer's not frozen. Everything's still working, right? So there's a kind of this tiny movement which implies that you're okay. Everything's going to be okay. I mean, personally, I remember coming from this kind of hacktivist background of the late 80s and the early 90s. I remember the first web browsers. It took forever. They were like, you would just wait and wait and wait for something to happen. And that's the first time I saw these things. And there was this really big hope for the internet, that it would provide a kind of a utopian anarchist zone that would be totally different than anything else in the world. And we just kept on waiting and waiting, and then you would come to this page which was like, hello, my name is Bob, this is my homepage. So there's a kind of but there was this kind of constant dreaming of something that's arriving in a moment. I took a little bit of a break after my early years in hacking, and kind of as an artist, it's not always easy to find out how to work with the stuff that you knew before you were an artist as an artist. So it took me a while to figure out how all these memories of time in this way and all the hacker stuff, how I could use that in an interesting way in my artistic practice. But when I returned to doing web-based and internet-based works in the 90s, weirdly this figure had returned. New and complex applications on the web, Google Docs, stuff like that, was happening, which meant that, and the internet was still fairly slow, so you had to wait a lot. So I was then waiting again, waiting for something to load, waiting for the text to be saved online, waiting for Facebook to connect me to somebody, waiting again, but in a slightly different way. And it's something that reminded me a lot of also my childhood, I guess, and then being at my grandmother's house and this feeling of infinite time, and like the clock on the mantelpiece ticking slowly away, giving an immense sense of calm, but also a fantastic, frustrating feeling of closed-in frustration and the impossibility of anything happening. Time was eternal at that moment. And I mean, just looking at these little geometric, predictable structures, modernist squares, usually a lot of times anyway. With a kind of also a little bit reminiscent maybe of infographics or statistics, or this in that kind of don't look at me, I'm not important, but I'm just explaining to you that time is passing. So there's a kind of a minimal mode, but they're also all sort of still. While I can be critical of this kind of, or frustrated at this kind of waiting, also there's something amazing. It's like before unwrapping the Christmas presents, right? You are waiting. It's the best point. There's something amazing in there. What is it? We don't know. but I'm still hoping. So I guess there is in all of this techno-utopianism still this hope that really appeals to me. This kind of again harking back to the 90s and these kind of hopes for the internet. I guess I'm not quite I'm not quite finished hoping. I still hope. I hope for different kinds of futures and maybe with a little more body and a little more song. But something, maybe a language that's more flickering and hopeful of new ways of using words and language, maybe, or fluidity of meaning rather than as the future said, like a perpetual restlessness on the grounds of a utopian optimism for revolution. And I wonder, I mean, how can we find a language to talk about a future that we don't know? How can we invest this hope for a future in ways that don't become self-fulfilling fictions? And looking at the internet, I see I'm not altogether. I mean, it's easy for an old, in internet terms, person like me to become very pessimistic. But I do see hope. I guess one of the places that I see hope is Kickstarter, actually. I don't know if it's if you know it. It's there's Kickstarter and Indiegogo are two platforms where people go and they'll say, I've created an amazing, I've drawn a drawing for an amazing iPhone cover. Do you want to help me to manufacture it? And then you can help them, you can give them money and they will manufacture it and you'll get a version of it and maybe a little gift as well. But there's a kind of like this kind of a peddling of ideas, the bringing forth of things that have not yet happened and offering them up and saying, hey, what about me? When you look through these pages, you come across so many ideas that just like, hey, look at me, why don't you realize me? And I guess that most of them are fairly kind of practical doorstops, computer parts. You can really tell it's mostly for computer people, so it's like a cover for your iBook or something like that. But there are also some other ones, and one of the ones I stumbled across was this one, which is on Indiegogo, because Kickstarter is very strict about the kind of things that they will allow. So on Indiegogo, there are a few other like stranger projects, and this is a project that's made by La Future for. I mean, maybe I'll just play it for you. It's easy, I think.
Hello, you might know me as a musician. My name is La Future and I'm the co-author of the forthcoming book, A Language That Will Change the World. 5 years ago, I joined the Transrational Institute and working towards thousands of new international languages, testing out fresh ideas of the future. We have constructed a new artificial, unstable, and international language in an effort to challenge the English language's position as the world's unofficial common language. Today I'm speaking to you as a sister who's ready to take the plunge and move to a new floating language. By funding the world's first and stable language, you will be contributing to the next step for humanity. However, opening new frontiers has never been easy. At the moment, the most spoken artificial language is Klingon, the made-up language of a fictional culture from the television series Star Trek. It is more widely spoken than famous languages such as Esperanto that were meant to be easy to learn, politically neutral, able to transcend nationality and foster peace and international understanding between people. During the past 5 years, we, at the Transrational Institute, have been researching the technical and legal challenges of creating and distributing a free language inspired by the success of Klingon. We've done the research, we've built the movement. During the last couple of years' time, academics from all over the world have contacted us asking to learn this new language. Now it's time to spread the message far and wide. Time to make the language available outside of those already in the know. We need your support to produce a new science fiction universe capable of spreading the new language. You can read more details about our action plan here at Indiegogo or at our website www.thenewlanguage.com. The new language addresses what we see as the 4 main challenges of contemporary international English. Disunity of subject and place. The new language operates with a plurality of subject and metaphor, in opposition to the supposed stability of metaphor and subject in contemporary international English. No nationality. The new language is not based on the cultural memories of specific historical, geographic, or economic histories. Inclusive meaning. The new language has no dictionary or human arbiters. It is based on non-personal random algorithms, whereas we today suffer under language-based procedures of repression, such as social and economic structures of language that shore up its representations. The new language does not separate the true from the false, the meaningful from the meaningless based on human criteria. Embracing complexity. Instead of the dumbed-down futures presented as the English language version of science fiction, the new language will raise the speaker's understanding of the complex systems of meaning we are embedded within, make use of and prescribed by, enabling speakers to work with the complexity of these systems for enjoyment rather than being governed by them or trying to simplify them. Fluidity of meaning. The inability of existing pseudo-rationalist languages to incorporate the reality of fluidity, and that which escapes symbolic articulation, signifies a powerlessness of established linguistic structures to take into account the unstable fundamentals of our everyday existence. Embracing mistakes. Mistakes are new operations of the grammar for established figures of discourse, and their syntactic laws are requirements, their imaginary configurations. Their metaphoric networks, and also, of course, what has traditionally not been valued at the level of utterances, spelling mistakes, bad grammar, and mixed metaphors. In order to find as large a possible audience for our new language, we have already drafted well-known script writers from Star Trek and Game of Thrones. We need their help to design a believable fictional universe in order to get a major television network to produce a television series that can circulate worldwide. We need funding to pay these experts, and that's where you come in. Anything you donate will be doubled by our matching sponsor, the Future Foundation. No matter what you can afford, please give what you can. Each contribution is helpful. The future is not a puzzle to be solved where all the necessary pieces are already on the table and just need to be rearranged. If we really want transformation of the present, we have to rethink how we talk about the hard stuff, such as history, economics, philosophy, art, ambiguities, and contradictions. We need to change the way we address these issues in order to be able to reformulate and rethink them. We will offer anyone the opportunity to bring about true freedom in their own lifetime. English was not invented in a day, and the new language won't be either. It will be built with the support of thousands of visionaries like you, people who understand the need for new opportunities for humankind. Thanks for listening. Hopefully next time we'll both be speaking the new language.
So while I'm a little unsure about this kind of global dyslexic idea for a new language, a new unstable language, I do appreciate the kind of the utopian sentiment of it, and I guess there's a kind of a hopeful note I'd like to end on. So I guess that's it for my presentation so far.
Thank you very much for your lecture, Kristoffer. And we have time for a few questions or comments. If you have any. Yes.
I do know that you're working often with mixing fiction and facts and stuff, and I wasn't sure, maybe I'm not supposed to know, but could you talk about a bit about that strategy, mixing fiction and facts?
Well, I guess it comes from a twofold, like a strong belief that fiction already plays a very strong part in the way that we negotiate the world and the way that our conceptions of the world are constructed. So everything in a way already is fiction. So the borders maybe not that strong for me. And the other side of it comes from kind of an interest in the unsettled territory between fiction and fact. I mean, because there is a kind of I hope this presentation had a kind of a slippage between the believable and the unbelievable, where it slips back and forth. And I think for me, these kind of moments of unfooting, where I don't know are the most enjoyable ones, and they're the ones I wanted to give you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Well, I think if that's it, we are actually finished on time. I think we'll just give you a big hand for very entertaining.
Thank you.